It was supposed to be just another ordinary morning. The sky was clear, the sun lazily rising between the city's skyline, and the distant sound of traffic played like background noise in a perfectly normal day. But something was different. At 7:43 a.m., a luxury car plunged off a winding cliffside road near Beverly Hills. The driver? Alexander Romer, one of the wealthiest and most feared real estate moguls in the country. News of the crash spread like wildfire. At first, they said it was brake failure, just bad luck. But those who knew Alexander suspected otherwise. He wasn't a man who lived without enemies, and his list of silent adversaries was long, very long. The car, a bulletproof Bentley Continental, simply lost control. But what no one knew was that at that exact moment, a shadow had been watching from afar, a boy and a black cat. The investigation began almost immediately. Footage from nearby security cameras was mysteriously corrupted. The initial report blamed mechanical failure, but certain facts didn't add up. The car had undergone a full inspection just 2 days prior. Alexander's personal driver had taken an unusual day off, and a small scratch on the side of the car hinted at a collision, something the police report failed to mention. Friends and associates rushed to offer condolences publicly, but behind closed doors, many were quietly celebrating. Alexander was known for his ruthlessness. To some, his fall felt poetic, but one curious detail stood out. An anonymous witness claimed to have seen a boy standing on the road seconds before the crash. A frail-looking child, dressed simply, with a black cat perched on his shoulder. The police dismissed it, but that boy would turn out to be the key to a truth darker than anyone imagined. Tabloids went wild with speculation, sabotage, revenge, even a corporate hit job. But as the headlines multiplied, one crucial detail slipped under the radar. Alexander had survived. He was rushed to a private hospital in a medically induced coma. His condition was stable, but no one knew what he would remember once he woke up. And then there was the boy. Every day, like clockwork, he showed up outside the hospital, always silent, always with the black cat. No one knew his name. No one came forward to claim him, but the nurses started to talk. Every time the boy appeared, Alexander's vital signs would change. Heart rate, breathing, brain activity. It was as if he was reacting. Some called it coincidence. Others whispered about a curse. But the truth was ready to step into the light. That same week, something strange happened. Confidential documents began disappearing from Alexander's company offices. High-level contracts vanished. Classified files leaked onto the dark web. Damaging information with the power to ruin lives. Lawyers and executives scrambled in damage control mode, but no one could trace the source. Meanwhile, a home security camera caught something eerie. The boy with the black cat standing at the gate of one of Alexander's private properties, a place where he kept personal records. The boy didn't try to enter. He just stared at the camera, knowingly, and smiled. The footage leaked, went viral. People started calling him the boy with the black cat. Forums exploded with theories. Was he a ghost? A secret son? A hacker in disguise? The mystery deepened, and still, no one could stop him from appearing again. Always silent, always with the cat. What had started as a simple traffic accident was now a national enigma. Alexander Romer, once untouchable, now lay unconscious in a hospital bed. The city buzzed with speculation, divided between those who hoped he'd recover and those who wished him gone for good. But amid all the questions, one was louder than the rest. Who was the boy, and why did he seem to know more than anyone? The air around the hospital grew heavier with tension. Some staff swore they saw the black cat inside the building, though no one let it in. Others claimed Alexander muttered strange words when small footsteps echoed in the hallway. The unease built steadily, because behind it all, a story of revenge was beginning to take shape. One that would be far sweeter and far darker than anyone dared expect. No one knew where he came from. Even the nearby homeless communities had never seen him before the accident. The boy appeared like a whisper between cracks in reality, quiet, yet impossible to ignore. His eyes held the weight of someone who had seen far too much, and his silence was unsettling, like he carried truths too heavy for the world. He wore simple, worn clothes, clean but faded. He didn't beg for food or money. He just stood there day after day outside the hospital, as if waiting for something, or someone. Most curious of all was the black cat that never left his side. It wasn't just a pet. It was a presence, an extension of him. He didn't speak to anyone, but when his eyes met yours, it was as if he was saying, "I know." The first to approach him was a nurse named Maribel. Curious but cautious, she offered the boy a glass of milk. He declined with a shake of the head, but the cat drank it. And right after that, every machine in Alexander's hospital room began to beep and flash uncontrollably. It was as if some invisible force had entered the room. That night, Maribel swore she saw the unconscious millionaire move his lips. For the first time, he whispered a word, unfinished, a name maybe. No one could be sure. In the days that followed, more staff began talking about the boy. Some believed he was an urban myth born from internet conspiracies. But one thing was certain. Wherever the boy went, strange things followed, and everything somehow centered around him, and the cat. One stormy night, security cameras caught the boy again, this time inside the hospital parking garage. All entrances were locked. No one saw him enter, but there he stood, directly facing the window of Alexander's hospital room, the cat perched calmly on his shoulder. The footage showed something chilling. For exactly 11 seconds, every light in the hospital flickered at once. Monitors shut down, alarms blared, and in room 408, Alexander opened his eyes. Just for a second, long enough to see the boy's reflection in the glass. Doctors called it a neurological response, but anyone who saw the footage knew better. Alexander recognized that boy, and in that fleeting moment, his expression wasn't confusion. It was fear, raw, unfiltered fear. The hospital increased security, but it was pointless. The boy came and went like smoke. Then a journalist named Leo Santoro decided to follow him. After 4 days of surveillance, he saw the boy enter an abandoned shack through a field. That's where he was living. No electricity, no water, just a pile of old books and a torn journal. Leo tried to sneak closer, but the cat jumped in front of him, slashing his face, as if to say, "Leave." Leo backed off, shaken, and watched from a distance. That night, he saw something chilling. The boy was writing in his journal, surrounded by old newspaper clippings, photos of Alexander at parties, trials, shady business deals. It wasn't just a child wandering aimlessly. It was something else, a mission, a reckoning. The next day, the boy returned to the hospital, but this time something had changed. For the first time, he spoke. Just a few words, whispered to a janitor, who later repeated them. The truth lives in the ruins. No one understood. But a private investigator hired by the Roma family decided to dig deeper. Cross-referencing old property records, he found something disturbing. Years ago, Alexander had demolished a children's school to build one of his luxury towers. And during that demolition, a child had disappeared. The case was buried, the parents silenced with hush money. Now, the question wasn't, who is the boy, anymore. It was, how did he survive? And more importantly, is he here to tell his story or to deliver justice? From the very first sighting, what stood out most, besides the boy's eerie silence, was the black cat. To many, it was just an animal, but those who paid close attention knew it was something else. There was a presence in that cat, a strange, unsettling intelligence. Its golden eyes didn't just look at people, they examined them. It didn't beg for food, didn't meow for attention. It simply watched, and its presence marked turning points. Every time something significant happened, vital signs fluctuated, old allies reappeared, damning evidence surfaced. The cat was there, still, silent, as if judging. Some even said the cat was the real bearer of the truth, while the boy was merely the vessel. As stories spread, the symbolism of the cat grew like a shadow creeping across the city. Elderly residents began linking the cat to old urban legends. They swore they had seen a black cat just like it years ago, on the day a children's school was illegally demolished to make room for one of Alexander's skyscrapers. They remembered hearing its cry right before the building collapsed. Others believed the cat was a guardian spirit, sent whenever a great injustice needed to be set right. But something more concrete began to surface. In every photo and every surveillance frame, whether at the hospital or near Alexander's properties, the cat's eyes seemed to glow differently. Sometimes they reflected images that hadn't happened yet, as if it could see the future, or remember the past no one dared to speak of. Social media went wild. Hashtags like "The Cat Knows," "Black Catboy," and "Truth Has Paws" started trending. Reddit users began tracking every public sighting of the cat. One user even created a map, tracing the cat's route through every property Alexander had sold foreclosed or stolen through shady deals. Each location marked a turning point in his empire's downfall. Coincidence? Or was the cat orchestrating the fall? Theories exploded. Was the cat a reincarnation? A curse? A cosmic messenger? All that was clear was this: wherever the cat walked, truth followed, and wherever it meowed, something crumbled. One humid night, a hospital guard claimed to hear the cat meowing inside Alexander's locked room. Impossible. No one had seen it enter. Rushing in, the guard found Alexander crying, tears streaming down the face of a man who never showed weakness. His heart monitor spiked. He whispered the same half-name again. On the bedsheet beside him, 3 fine scratches, like claw marks. No one could explain it. But that very morning, Alexander's company suffered a massive stock crash. Coincidence again, maybe. But even the skeptics were starting to question reality. Something older, deeper, more primal was in motion, and the black cat was at the center of it all. Days later, the cat appeared in front of the Roma family estate. It sat on the doorstep, staring directly into the security camera for 7 hours straight. No food, no water, no movement. When a family member tried to spray it with water, it vanished. Not ran, vanished. The security footage caught a strange flash of light, and then nothing. After that, family members began falling ill. Sudden depression, panic attacks, night terrors. One of them even claimed to see the cat's eyes in every mirror. The symbolism was no longer symbolic. It was real. It was terrifying. And wherever the cat went, truth followed. Ruin followed. It wasn't just a pet anymore. It was the harbinger of everything they had tried to bury, finally coming to the surface. Alexander Roma was the kind of man who only smiled when someone else was losing, especially if he caused it. He built his empire through backdoor deals, legal manipulation, and ruthless alliances. To the public, he was a genius entrepreneur. But behind the scenes, Alexander was cold, calculated, and merciless. He enjoyed breaking people, emotionally, professionally, financially. Former employees whispered about his cruelty. A cleaning lady fired for coughing during a meeting. An intern who took his own life after being publicly humiliated. A business partner bankrupted by forged fraud charges. All of it buried, deep beneath layers of wealth and fear. But now, the skeletons were knocking at the door. As the media obsessed over the mystery of the crash, old allies started backing away. But many of them weren't just allies. They were victims or accomplices. A leaked video showed Alexander yelling at a pregnant employee, telling her, "Pregnancy isn't an excuse for incompetence." In another clip, he said, "The poor exist to fuel the system." Words that once went unnoticed now burned through the public's consciousness. The mask was slipping. Flashbacks and witness accounts revealed the real Alexander, arrogant, dismissive, with eyes that screamed, "I can buy your life and sell it for profit." He thought money made him untouchable, that no one would dare expose him, but someone was. And it wasn't a journalist, it was a boy with a black cat. The stories multiplied like ghosts finally freed. A longtime gardener said Alexander once ordered a century-old tree cut down because it cast too much shade on his helipad. During a construction project, a worker died in a collapse caused by negligence. The family received a pathetic settlement. Alexander reportedly said, "He was poor anyway." His cruelty wasn't just professional. His wife, visibly submissive, was often humiliated in public. One of his sons vanished from the spotlight after a fallout. No one knew why. But now, in the light of recent events, people began to wonder, could the boy with the cat be that lost son? Or worse, proof of something even darker. Leaked internal documents painted an even more disturbing portrait. Alexander kept lists, yes, lists, of people he planned to remove from his life. Colleagues, employees, even family. Marginal notes read, "Replace ASAP, potential threat," or worse, "Destabilize before he gets too big." He was a master of psychological warfare, a man who built to dominate, not to grow. His meetings were described as verbal torture, his presence, a shadow that weighed down every room. And now, with him motionless in a hospital bed, those around him were finally tasting the fear he once inflicted. The empire was crumbling, not from external enemies, but from the ghosts he refused to acknowledge. And the final piece of the puzzle, it had been there all along, the boy. Someone Alexander had likely dismissed, ignored, or destroyed. Now, with a black cat as his silent witness, the boy peeled back every layer of rot beneath the polished suits and corporate speeches. Alexander truly believed nothing could ever touch him. Not the law, not morality, not humanity itself. But what he never expected was to be exposed by a child who carried not just pain but the truth. And when truth chooses revenge, there isn't enough money in the world to silence it. For days, the boy remained silent. Then, as if unlocking an ancient vault, he began to speak, but not directly. He left clues, small phrases on sticky notes placed discreetly throughout the hospital, on stairwells, behind bathroom mirrors, near emergency exits. Phrases like, "Justice begins where silence ends." They knew. They did it anyway. And, "Not every victim dies." No one officially confirmed who was leaving them, but among the staff it was clear. The boy was speaking, piece by piece, revealing a truth too heavy for words. Then came a date. One note simply read, September 13th, 2012. Most ignored it, but a curious clerk dug into the construction company's archives, and what she found changed everything. On that exact date, a classified report described the demolition of an abandoned school building, one that was supposedly empty, but the report was a lie. City records confirmed the building was still an active daycare center, run by a local community. That day, 5 children were inside. The building collapsed in minutes. 3 were rescued alive, 1 died, and 1 disappeared. No formal investigation was conducted. Alexander Roma paid off families in secret settlements. The tragedy was reclassified as an operational mistake, but now it was back. Every message the boy left wasn't just a memory, it was a warning. The silence was breaking, and the city wasn't ready for what would rise from the ruins. Then the question echoed everywhere. Could the boy be that missing child? Could he have survived the collapse? Hidden, abandoned, forgotten, but alive? Experts tried to match genetic traits. The media swarmed. Podcasts, talk shows, social media, everyone was asking, who is the boy with the black cat? But the answer didn't come from TV. It came from Alexander himself. In a rare moment of clarity, he asked for pen and paper. Barely able to move, he scribbled one word, Elias. Doctors thought it was nonsense, but when a retired engineer heard the name, his face went pale. Elias was one of the children from that daycare, he whispered, the only one who was never found. Then the boy returned. One cold morning, he entered the hospital carrying a cardboard box. No one stopped him. It was as if the whole city held its breath. Inside the box were documents, photos, forged reports, bribery receipts, but most damning of all, a child's notebook pulled from the wreckage of the daycare. The first pages were innocent drawings, but the last one showed a man in a suit with cold eyes and a black cat by his feet. The signature, Elias. The truth hit like a thunderclap. The boy was Elias. The child Alexander tried to erase. He survived, grew up, and now returned, not for revenge, but for the truth to be known. Alexander collapsed into a coma after a nervous breakdown. Reporters camped outside the hospital. The public split, some in disbelief, others in denial. But deep down, everyone felt it. This was real, and above it all, the mystery of the cat lingered. In the notebook, one drawing showed the boy hugging the cat as a kitten. It was the same cat, 13 years later, unchanged. Impossible, but real, as if the cat had been sent to protect him or to lead him to justice. Elias was no longer a shadow. He was a living memory, a wound left open, and a cruel reminder that no crime stays buried forever, not even under concrete and silence. For years, Alexander Roma surrounded himself with a circle of so-called loyalty, built not on trust, but on greed, vanity, and silence. Business partners who looked away in exchange for massive bonuses. Lawyers who erased evidence as easily as they washed their hands of guilt. Smiling politicians who traded permits for luxury dinners and campaign donations. His empire wasn't just steel and concrete, it was lies. Lies with faces. But now, with Elias becoming a national name and the child's notebook authenticated by experts, those faces began to pale. One by one, Alexander's closest allies began to crumble, not from legal action, but from fear. Fear that the boy knew far more than he let on. The first to fall was Amanda Trujillo, former legal director of Roma Corporation. Confronted with the documents released by Elias, she denied everything, called them forged. But within 24 hours, a video surfaced. Amanda, in 2013, instructing her team to destroy daycare demolition records. The footage was secretly recorded by an intern, who later disappeared, likely fired or worse. Now, the video was online, permanent. Amanda lost her law license, was suspended from her current government position, and is now under criminal investigation. She held a press conference, claimed she was just following orders, but no one wanted excuses. Truth is hungry, and when it starts feeding, it devours those who tried to bury it first. Next was Donovan Meyer, Alexander's former business partner and the current CEO of a shell company tied to Roma funds. For years, Donovan operated from the shadows, doing what Alexander wouldn't sign himself, buying votes, silencing witnesses, moving hush money. But Elias had everything: bank statements, emails, screenshots, over 180 pages of damning evidence anonymously delivered to prosecutors. Within a week, Donovan's assets were frozen, his investors fled, and his company collapsed overnight. His breakdown on live TV shook the nation. "I didn't know a child was involved," he sobbed. But now, it was too late for remorse. Each new revelation from Elias, always precise, calculated like surgical strikes, toppled another name. City officials, engineers, inspectors, anyone who signed, concealed, or benefited was being dragged into the spotlight. The most symbolic collapse was that of Congressman Marco Aurelio Brandão, who for years called Roma a visionary of progress. In under 48 hours, leaked audio exposed him, trading the daycare demolition for political favors. He lost his seat, his party's support, and was hospitalized for a nervous breakdown. Elias's name was now a sentence, a living echo of buried crimes demanding payment. But it wasn't just the powerful who fell. Some who had simply stayed silent couldn't bear the guilt anymore. One nurse who treated the victims after the collapse publicly confessed she saw the boy alive, but was told to report him as deceased. Her confession aired live. That same day, another note appeared in the hospital, written in familiar handwriting: "Truth only hurts those who chose to lie." Elias wasn't seeking revenge for its own sake. He didn't want blood. He wanted memory, recognition, justice. And he wasn't going to stop me until the last name on the list was revealed. In the world Alexander built, everyone pretended not to see. Now, pretending was no longer an option. The fall of the false allies was just the beginning. They were used to looking down on everyone, from high-rise offices, leather chairs, surrounded by bodyguards, contracts, and bank accounts. But now, their blood ran cold at the mere mention of one name: Elias. The boy, once ignored, lost in the rubble of a forgotten tragedy, now haunted them, and he didn't need to speak. Just the sound of his footsteps down the hospital hallway was enough. Or the image of the black cat sitting silently by the entrance, watching the glass door like it knew who wouldn't walk out unchanged. The fear began subtly: trembling hands, nervous glances during meetings, phones shattered after opening one too many emails. But soon it grew: insomnia, panic attacks, cold sweats. Because now they understood. The mask was gone, and the boy was digging up every truth they thought they'd buried for good. Amanda Trujillo, once confident and precise, now stayed locked in her home, refusing to speak to the media, surrounded by bottles of prescription pills. Her voice, once commanding in court, now trembled on phone calls. In a recorded conversation, she whispered, "He knows he's coming for me." But Elias never knocked on her door, never made threats. He didn't have to. Truth, when released properly, becomes its own form of punishment. Donovan Meyer, once flaunting sports cars and rare watches, now panicked at every ping from his phone. He fired his staff, moved into a rental, deleted all his social media. He wanted to disappear before being erased by public shame. But fear doesn't let you escape. It clings to your skin, eats you from the inside, turns the shadow of a boy into a prophecy you can't outrun. Even those not yet exposed started showing signs. Like animals sensing an earthquake before it hits, fear is contagious. And in Alexander Roma's case, it was visible. In one of his fleeting conscious moments, he saw the boy through the glass window, and his vitals spiked. His heart raced, tears formed in his eyes. Doctors called it a neurological response, but everyone watching knew the truth. Terror, not of the boy himself, but of what he stood for, of what he remembered. Because somewhere deep down, Alexander recognized Elias's eyes. He had seen them before, not during the crash, on the day of the tragedy. when Elias was just a child, and Alexander was a man who believed cement could bury guilt. The media feasted on every new revelation, but the fear lived in private. You could see it in the silence of the guilty, in the sudden disappearance of once prominent names, in the unexpected international vacations of moguls who never left the city. It wasn't just fear of justice, it was fear of conscience, because they weren't just being judged by the public anymore, they were judging themselves. Their own choices, their own silence, their role in destroying lives, and no amount of wealth or lawyers could cover that up, because in the face of truth, fear is the only sentence that doesn't need a courtroom. That overcast morning, Elias walked through the hospital lobby like he always did, but something was different. The chatter stopped. Phones fell silent. The air was thick, suffocating. He didn't speak, just walked. The black cat followed as always. In the waiting room, 3 of Alexander's former allies sat trying to draft a statement to control the damage. But when they saw the boy, they froze. One dropped hot coffee in his lap. Another rushed to the restroom in panic. The third broke down in tears. Elias never stopped, never looked back, because he already had what he came for. The fear written on their faces. The same fear Alexander never admitted. The fear of someone with nothing left to lose. Everything started moving faster than Elias expected. The revelations, the media storm, the collapse of reputations. It had all awakened powerful, dangerous forces. The ones who still had something to lose began fighting back. They deleted digital footprints, shut down servers, moved money to offshore accounts, and worse, they tried to control the story. A new version of Alexander's accident hit the media, a supposed terrorist attack targeting wealthy businessmen. Fake documents surfaced, carefully planted news segments. It was a campaign of confusion, a last-ditch effort to shift the spotlight away from Elias, to buy time, because they knew he had something left, something they hadn't seen yet, and they were desperate to stop it. Then Elias left a new note, the boldest one yet, written in red ink and pinned to the hospital's public bulletin board. I have 72 hours before they erase everything. It was a warning. He had the final proof, unquestionable. But time was running out. Pressure closed in from all directions. Hackers attacked his devices. Someone tried to trace his location. A middleman even offered him $5 million to disappear. Elias refused, but he understood. He was now a target. And one wrong move could erase everything, including him. Meanwhile, inside the hospital, Alexander's medical records started to change. Test results proving he'd responded to Elias vanished from the system. Internal security footage was deleted. Nurses were replaced. A full-scale cover-up had begun, but Elias was ready. He had hard copies, offshore backups, witness videos, and one more thing, a website, a simple countdown clock with a single line. When the time runs out, the truth will begin. The site went viral. Thousands watched, waiting, hoping, dreading, because everyone knew what he was about to release would change everything. During this chaos, a federal judge once linked to the Roma family issued a warrant to seize sensitive materials. Authorities tried to raid the shack where Elias had lived, but he was already gone, not fleeing, strategizing. He knew time wasn't just a threat, it was a weapon. Every tick of the clock made his enemies panic, and in that panic, they slipped. One critical mistake revealed the final piece. In a tapped phone call, a top company lawyer said, "The blue folder was never burned." The blue folder, the original dossier, all the signatures, all the falsified reports, all the payoff records. It was hidden in an old vault beneath the company's headquarters. Now Elias knew, but he'd have to act fast. He had just 24 hours. The building was set for demolition under the guise of urban redevelopment. If he didn't get there in time, that vault and its secrets would be buried forever. That stormy night, tense and cold, marked the final battle. Elias broke into the building, but he wasn't alone. Someone unexpected had come to help. A ghost from Alexander's past, another forgotten victim. They raced through the dark, against security, against the rain, against time itself. The black cat followed, as always, a quiet symbol that fate could no longer be avoided. When the online timer hit 0 the world held its breath, and in that exact moment, the contents of the blue folder were broadcast live across every major platform. The truth was out, unstoppable. And now time belonged to Elias. The release of the blue folder sent shockwaves across the nation. Millions watched in real time as the Roma Empire collapsed. Illegal contracts, falsified permits, bribes, all tied directly to the school's destruction. But at the very end of the folder, something no one expected surfaced. An old envelope. Inside it, a DNA test. The names on the page? Alexander Roma and Elias Montero. The result? 99.998% genetic match. The implication was undeniable. The mysterious boy, long assumed to be just another orphan, was Alexander's biological son. A son hidden, denied, erased from the story like an unwanted blemish. And now the entire world knew the one secret Alexander never thought would resurface. The backstory was both heartbreaking and revealing. Elias was the result of a relationship between Alexander and a company employee, a talented but humble architect named Julia Montero. When she became pregnant, she thought her life would finally improve. But Alexander, obsessed with status and reputation, did the unthinkable. He fired her, threatened legal action, and forced her into silence with a non-disclosure agreement. Julia, with no options, complied, but kept the child. Elias was raised without ever knowing who his father was. He attended the very daycare center that Alexander's company later demolished. Julia worked there as a volunteer, and on the day of the accident, she died, shielding her son with her own body. Elias survived, but lost everything, except the truth. For years, Elias wandered through the margins of the city, fueled by broken memories and quiet rage. He pieced together clues, shredded documents, names, old addresses, and always by his side, the black cat, once his mother's, now his only family. The DNA result wasn't just shocking, it was poetic justice. Elias wasn't just a survivor. He was Alexander's own blood, a rejected son, buried by his father's ambition. And now he had returned, not just to expose the truth, but to force his father to see what he had done, to confront the legacy of a child abandoned and a woman sacrificed. When Alexander learned the truth, still bedridden in the hospital, he broke, he cried, his vitals spiked, his breathing faltered. This time, it wasn't fear, it was guilt. He remembered the moment Julia begged him to accept the child. He remembered the DNA test he had hidden in a locked drawer. And he remembered choosing to forget, choosing to erase them both from his perfect world. But now, in front of millions, he could no longer run from the one judgment no amount of wealth could silence, the judgment of a son. And in Elias's eyes, he didn't see revenge. He saw a mirror, not of power, but of integrity, of courage, of everything he had failed to be. The public was stunned and moved. The story sparked national debates about justice, corruption, fatherhood, abandonment. Elias became a symbol, not of victimhood, but of resilience, of memory, of redemption through truth. He didn't want fame. He wanted his mother honored, his name restored, and his father to feel what it meant to be forgotten. And now, he had it. The world knew. The father knew. And for Alexander Roma, there was no greater punishment than this. Knowing that the empire he built stood on the grave of the woman he once loved and the son he chose to erase. Many expected Elias to take it all, to seize the company, to sue the Roma family, to appear on every talk show screaming for justice. But it was exactly what he didn't do that turned him into a legend. He didn't scream. He didn't burn bridges. He revealed, calmly, intelligently, truthfully. The real revenge wasn't causing pain. It was letting everyone see, making the world witness the story they tried to erase, and forcing Alexander, still alive, to face the unraveling of every lie, until nothing remained but the man he had spent his life hiding from, a father who rejected his son, and a tycoon who buried people to build his fortune. Elias didn't want money. He wanted his truth, his name, his existence acknowledged. On the day the court officially recognized Elias as Alexander Roma's biological son, he didn't attend. He sent a letter, a plain white envelope with a handwritten line, "My name is no longer a secret. That's enough." No request for inheritance, no financial demands. The media was stunned. The family's legal team panicked. But to Elias, it was never about money. It was about memory. His mother, Julia, was posthumously honored as a symbol of resilience. The skyscraper that was planned on the former daycare site was halted by court order. In its place, a cultural center was built, the Julia Montero Center, so no one is ever forgotten again. The first exhibition featured children's drawings recovered from the rubble. Among them, A boy hugging a black cat gazing at the horizon. Alexander, still alive but frail, never fully recovered. He spent his last days in quiet regret. Rumors said he asked to see Elias, but the boy never came. Forgiveness for Elias wasn't needed. He didn't hate, but he didn't forget. And it wasn't his duty to heal the emptiness of a man who chose to be absent. His greatest revenge was simply this: he lived, he grew, he overcame, without becoming like his father. As Alexander faded into obscurity, Elias rose, not as a victim but as a voice that echoed in schools, in movements, in thousands who had also been silenced. His pain wasn't his end. It was the spark that helped rebuild countless others. As for the black cat, it vanished. No one saw it again. Some say it walks still, where justice has yet to be served. Others say it simply completed its mission. But some believe it still lives with Elias, far from the spotlight in a quiet house in the countryside, where the boy finally became a man, and lives, in peace. Justice was done, not with violence, but with truth. And in that quiet, radiant truth, Elias's story ends. Not with destruction, but with dignity. Because in the end, monsters aren't slain with swords. They're undone by truth, courage, and the silent gaze of a boy who never forgot who he was. Moral of the story: true revenge isn't returning pain. It's showing that pain didn't destroy you. It made you stronger. It made you stand and reminded the world, truth can't be buried. It blooms, even in concrete. If this story moved you, if you've ever felt wronged, or if you know someone who's been silenced by pain, share this video, hit the like button, and tell us in the comments, what would you do if you were Elias? And don't forget to subscribe, because here truth has a voice, and every story, no matter how dark, can have a sweet twist.